Welcome everyone to our reflection for Sunday the 23rd of August as we consider our lost humanity. And I'll begin as always by lighting our chalice candle. And our opening words today come from Tess Baumberger. From the busyness of every day, we gather once a week to remember who we are, to dream of who we might become. We travel this road together. As companions on this journey, we share the milestones we meet along the way. Individual moments of joy and sorrow become shared moments of comfort and celebration. We travel this road together. We share this journey across differences of belief and opinion because we value diversity and because we care for one another. We travel this road together. Today, as we take the next steps, let us notice our fellow travellers, the burdens that they carry, the songs that inspire their hearts. We travel this road together. As we gather in beloved community, let us open the holy havens of our hearts. Let us share the sacred places of our souls. For we are pilgrims who share a common path. We walk this road together. And so let's join in a time of prayer together. Words by Lynn Cox. Spirit of life and love, known by many names, and yet fully known by none. We give thanks for this time and this place of renewal as we pause in our travelling. Grant us the courage to continue on the journey, the courage to speak up for the well-being of others and ourselves and the planet. May we forgive each other when our courage falls short, and may we try again. Grant us hearts to love boldly, to embody our faith and our values in living words and deeds. May our hearts open to embrace humility, grace, and reconciliation. Grant us the ability to learn and grow, to let the spirit of love and truth work its transformation upon us and within us. Grant us the spirit of hospitality, the willingness to sustain a fit dwelling place for the holy that resides in all being. Grant us a sense of being at peace in the world, even as we are in motion. Let us cultivate together the strength to welcome every stranger and all manner of ways to be on the journey together. Amen. Our story today is by Dawn Star Ceres Borchelt, and it's called When You Have More Than Enough. Once upon a time there was a family. Maybe this family had not quite enough to eat. Or maybe they had just about enough. Or perhaps they had more than enough. You might not have been able to tell. They might not have been able to tell. Sometimes it's hard to tell if you have enough or not. It's hard not to want more or different things than you have. In any case, this family came together one autumn day for a celebration, a feast, a time of gratitude. They gathered, as we have done, around a table. There was food, there was drink, there were flowers to remind them of beauty. And then there was a call from the gate outside their door. "Hello, we're hungry and thirsty, and we see that you have a feast. May we come in?" Well, the family didn't know at first how to answer. Who were these people at the gate? Was it safe to let these people in? Did they have enough to share? Was there room? But then they remembered. They remembered that most of them had come to this family, this celebration, from somewhere else. They remembered that even they, who were there at that table, had not always been kind to each other. There had been times when they hurt each other. There were still times when they made each other sad or angry or afraid. There's no way to make life completely safe. They remembered times when others had shared with them, even when the others might not have had quite enough of their own. They remembered when each new member of the family had been born, or come to stay, or married in. And they remembered that they had always found a way to make room. And they remembered an old, old saying: when you have more than you need, it is better to build a longer table than a higher fence. We have enough, they said. We might have more than enough. We are many and strong, and we can hold a safe space here in our home for all who come. And so they went out of their door and to the gate in the fence, and they opened the gate and they invited the people who were there in. Inside they pulled out another table and made the space for these newcomers. They covered it with a cloth, and the newcomers set upon it a dish full of something fragrant and delicious, which was strange and wonderful to the family. Everybody shared, and there was enough. But I want us to notice that we only heard one part of that story. We heard the story of the people who were in the family in the house, ready to feast. We didn't hear the story of the people at the gate, wanting to come in. We don't know who they are, or why they are there, or what they bring to the table, other than the strange and wonderful food. So when you hear other stories about people wanting to come and share our land and our resources, I want you to think about whose stories they are, and whose stories they aren't, and what those other stories might have been. A reading now by Erica A. Hewitt, adapted slightly, entitled Seeking Mercy, Seeking Home. For many reasons, people depart. They leave home, or the places given to them in place of home that might have been lost to war, and seek refuge from 1,000 dangers and uncertainties. For many reasons, many of them inconceivable to us who live in relative peace and prosperity, People can't stay where they are, in the places that they know. So for themselves and for their children, they trade the hell they know for the unknown and the foreign. For so many reasons, unimaginable to me and maybe to you too, people give up their sense of belonging. They surrender the climate and food and sounds and smells that their bodies have always known for the new, the unfamiliar, the harsh and unlearnable. What deep respect these refugees, asylum seekers and immigrants deserve for their courage, for their capacity to keep moving forward towards hope. But while some members of our human family are throwing their arms wide to welcome those seeking mercy and seeking home, others are nearly taking up arms to drive them away. It's a painful territory that stretches between the merciful and the damned. As a minister, I'm in the business of holding up important truths as I see it, and naming how those truths intersect with the news on our screens. As the refugee crisis unfolds, I've had to remind myself of two things. One, to some degree, we Westerners are all complicit in the unstable geopolitical disasters that result in such vast human suffering. And two, to adjudicate and assess which refugees are deserving of mercy and which ones aren't, is to exhibit an arrogance so dehumanizing that it borders on dangerous. When human suffering comes spilling over our borders, there is no clear division between them and us. Our country's own policies are culpable, and by extension, us. We have protected our Western lifestyle of consumption and corporate rule. We play a role in inequality and ecological disasters and wars over dwindling resources every time we lose sight of the fact that we are powerful players in a fragile but wildly interconnected global community, which is often. We've lost a bit of our soul. That's what fear does. Fear is a voice that says nothing matters more than self-preservation and self-importance. Fear drains the antifreeze out of your heart, so your compassion centre runs cold. It cuts off the feeding tubes that keep our souls supple and our morality intact. And fear, I think, is what's at the heart of the stingy fool's game of deciding which immigrants are deserving of asylum. Fear says, for my comfortable position of privilege, I will decide whose hell is raw and terrifying enough to merit compassion. What would it be like, I wonder, to choose another path? How much would it cost us to invoke the principles of our faith and the beating heart of our ethical lives by saying, we are a single, interconnected human family. We make one another stronger and braver by sharing what we have. All people have the same worth and the same inherent dignity, but no human being is illegal. And the suffering of people beyond our borders asks us to examine how we have created the conditions for its existence. Words by Erica A. Hewitt. And so let's join together again in a time of prayer. God of love, you whose Spirit calls us to a life of caring, we come before you full of guilt and shame, in desperate need of your forgiveness. You call us to love you with all our heart, that we might embrace the enormity of your compassion, with all our soul, that we might behold the vision of your people reunited, with all our strength, that we might work without ceasing for justice and reconciliation, with all our mind, that we might marvel at the mystery of your creation. You call us to love you. We hear your voice, and we turn away. You call us to love you by healing the sick and the heartsore, by holding the lonely and abandoned, by standing alongside the weak and downtrodden, by speaking with those who have not been heard. You call us to love you. We hear your voice, and we turn away. For to love you is to love all your people, those who frighten us by their difference, those who threaten us in our complacency, those who challenge us in our arrogance, and those who hurt us as we witness their suffering. We confess our pride, our insecurity, our self-absorption and irrational fear. All those times when we have walked by on the other side, changed the channel, turned the page, or just kept on scrolling. Help us to see you in the faces of those around us, and help us to find the courage to love you by loving your people. For we long to be able to say with truth that we love you, our God, with all our heart, all our soul, all our strength, and all our mind, and that we love you, our neighbour, as much as we do ourselves. Amen. Frank Claburn wrote this heart-wrenching hymn called I Stand Outside Your Door. I stand outside your door. Will you admit me? I have no home, no land, no friend, no life. I ask so little from your great abundance. A place to sleep, some food for child and from wife. I have no pride, no plea, except asylum. A place of peace beyond our world of strife. We heard a promise from your distant country, a whisper of your peace through sounds of war. We travelled long, rejected, cast asunder. No rest we found, far from our native shore. We have no pride, no plea except asylum. Will you provide for us an open door? And so we come and wait upon your borders, anonymous, forsaken, and alone. Where now your promise? Where is love, compassion? Where now the hope? Has your heart turned to stone? Forget your pride, and hear our plea, asylum. And let us know one country, and one home. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, so the saying goes. It's twee, but twee can often be very true. But that first step can be so hard to take, especially when it's a journey of an unknown number of steps, leading in an unknown direction, with any number of hazards along the way. And that's what it is for refugees fleeing their home. Refugees are the innocent victims of a problem the global community can no longer ignore. Men, women, children, whole families and communities have fled from the places they once called home. Having faced violence and conflict or environmental disaster, they have risked their lives and made treacherous journeys to uncertain destinations in their bid for safety. And once more this week, we have been faced with the knowledge that a scared, desperate human being has drowned in a bid to reach safety in our country. The Guardian newspaper reports that a further 5 people arrived in England on Friday, risking their lives in force 8 gales, rain showers and rough seas. Analysis by PA Media shows the total number of migrant boat arrivals for 2020 exceeds 5,000, more than double the 1,900 known to have made the 21-mile trip last year. The milestone was passed after a Sudanese asylum seeker, 16-year-old Abdel Fattah Hamdallah, drowned in the Channel on Wednesday, when the supermarket-bought dinghy he was in was punctured by the shovels being used as makeshift oars. How many people heard that news and remembered the heartbreaking images of little Alan Kurdi? These people are not economic migrants who just want to get a bit richer in a different country. If that was all it was, they would not take the risks and dangers that so many are willing to face as the lesser of 2 evils. There are refugees from so many countries, fleeing so much horror of many different kinds. Many refugees pray daily for a chance to return to their former homes, if they are still intact. But fleeing from war and imminent destruction, from torture and abuse, from environmental devastation, their only choice was to risk their lives for safety and survival. The care for refugees is a theme explored frequently throughout the Bible. Throughout the Old Testament, from Abraham to Ruth, the Israelites were travellers and foreigners, migrating from one place to another in search of peace and security. The writings tell that God commanded them to be kind and hospitable to the aliens in their land. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. That's from Leviticus 19. In the New Testament, we are introduced to a young Jesus who knew what it was like to be displaced. Shortly after his birth, Jesus and his family fled to a foreign land and survived a mass infanticide ordered by the dictator King Herod. But they lived as refugees. They lost their homes, connections with family and friends. They depended on the hospitality of strangers in a foreign land. During his ministry as an adult, Jesus taught that the sheep, the true believers, are to be distinguished from the goats, the unbelievers, based on the way they treat the least of their brothers and sisters, which included a clear mandate to invite the stranger in. In our own lives, it would be strange to think of ourselves as refugees. We have our lovely, safe homes, and there is no reason why we should suddenly need to up sticks and run for our lives, leaving all our worldly goods behind us. Hard to contemplate what that would be like. But there's a game that we've played at Monton, as we ran events to raise money for Christian Aid, called Ludo with a Twist. You know the basic game of Ludo, going round the board to get home. Well, this one has various chance cards that you have to pick up on the way, saying, for example, that the boat that you were on, trying to get to Europe, was sinking, so you had to throw all your belongings overboard. Or that you were in the mountains when the snow hit. If you have warm clothes in your kit, you could move forward one space. If you didn't, you had to go right back to the beginning. What was hardest about that game was not the rules themselves, but realizing that these were real situations faced by millions of very real people. And when the card said, "You now have no chance of reaching a place of safety and must take your marker off the board," that is in fact the outcome for many, as it was for Abdel Fattah Hamdallah. But our country, certainly our government, is losing its humanity. Instead of hearing about and knowing about these refugees coming from horrors we cannot imagine, and reaching out to give them a warm welcome and the offer of comfort and healing, there is talk now of sending Navy warships into the Channel to turn these people away. Those who do make it here face detention centres, and if they're released from those, a harsh survival existence in poor quality housing with minimal financial support and a hostile environment. To be allowed to stay, they must go through a complicated procedure which may well involve them reliving in front of strangers sitting in judgment of them the awful things that have already been done to them, and detailing the awful things that would await them if they were forced to return. These are our brothers and sisters. These are people in need. And this is being done in our name. We may not be the people in government making those decisions, but if we do nothing to challenge it, then we are complicit. And that runs completely counter to our faith, our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, and the interconnectedness and oneness of all people. To quote Erica Hewitt again, what can we do? In some ways, very little. But very little still means something. We're doing something when we allow our heart to break over the scope of human suffering. We're doing something when we step beyond our experience to acknowledge that we cannot know, and God willing, will never know, what it's like to make such harrowing decisions. We're doing something when we interrupt a conversation to say, no human being is illegal, It's not kind or civil to talk about people that way. And we're doing something when we use the language of reverence and interdependence to describe the global community. As we said at the end of our prayer earlier, we long to be able to say with truth that we love you, our God, with all our heart, all our soul, all our strength and all our mind, and that we love you, our neighbour, as much as we do ourselves. Amen. And so, for our blessing, I'm going to end with a prayer by the Reverend Eric Cherry. Let us first hold the refugee and the immigrant in prayer. May God be with you. May your grief and loss be assuaged. May the hard road you travel include spaces of rest and security. May you know your inherent worth and dignity every day of the journey. And let us also pray for the people who are met along the way. May they, us, remember how they were strangers too. May they embrace the pathways of compassion. May they recall the teachings of the prophets, and may they make room in their hearts and their homes. May all who travel be safe. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. And we'll meet again, same time next week, you in your home, me in mine, together in our hearts. Until that time, stay safe, stay strong, and know that you are loved.